Good evening. I welcome you all to this meeting of the Cardinia Shire Council. We commenced this meeting earlier this evening to consider a confidential matter and then adjourn to reconvene at 7 p.m. Please note that this meeting is being webcast live over the internet on Council's website. Councillors will be available after the meeting if any members of the gallery wish to discuss issues of interest. Before we begin, I would like to express first to the community that Cardinia Shire Council is taking the COVID-19 virus seriously, and we are reviewing Council's services and procedures to ensure all members of the public are safe and well during this time. I would also like to recognise the anniversary of the Bunyip Bushfire Complex. It's been a hard year for many of our community members, for both those affected and those assisting with recovery, and I wish to thank you all for your tremendous efforts. We will commence the meeting with the following prayer. Almighty God, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. We have an apology tonight from Councillor Ray Brown, and that is it. We have all other councillors present. Minutes of previous meetings. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the meetings as listed? Well, there's a race to the start there. I'm going to Councillor Jodie Owen and a seconder, please. Councillor Graham Moore. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Declarations of interest. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest to announce? There being none, I will continue. The Council conducts its meetings according to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for the consideration this evening that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The following items withdrawn for tonight's proceedings are as follows. Items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 10. Item number 3. Customer service present at the Hills Hub, feasibility report. Withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Councillor Olin to move.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got the following alternate motion to item 3. It reads that Council 1 notes the customer service presence at the Hills Hub feasibility report. 2. Defers consideration of this item to allow council officers to directly consult with the Hills Hub Advisory Committee to ascertain their feedback of the potential models of operation detailed in the report. And 3, relists this item for determination at the April 2020 General Council meeting. I believe so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Michael Schilling. Back to Councillor Owen to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and I really appreciate Councillor Schilling for seconding this motion just to allow me to speak to it. That's really great, so thank you very much for that. So this report comes back from a notice of motion which was adopted by this council on the 18th of November 2019, and the motion was that council officers prepare a report for the March 2020 General Council meeting considering the viability, practicability and financial costs associated with providing a satellite customer service access to officers from appropriate council departments at the Hills Hub. Such satellite services access to officers could include, but not limited to, customer service, general inquiries, ability to pay rates, planning queries, access to planners, etc. Also, conducting a future pilot to facilitate such an increased provision of council services access to officer at the Hills Hub. So that motion was passed in November, and this report reports on that motion. And I really appreciate the officers involved in this report, the author, particularly Lucy Divers. I really appreciate the effort in this report, and it's really good. It details the options. if council is to go down this path, how much would it cost, and to what extent, would you want to see customer service being delivered in the Hills Hub? So I really appreciate that. It ranges from Model 1 being the most, I suppose, the cheapest, the most, I suppose, basic, compared to Model 6, which is full-on customer service. Since I got elected to Ranges Ward, representing the Ranges Ward community back in 2012, this is something that I've been advocating or being on a wish list of mine, and obviously this term is coming to an end soon, and I definitely wanted this up on the table for council to consider it, because I have residents across the hills speak to me wanting improved access to council offices. Not everyone can use online forums. We know that people still like to come into a council civic centre or customer service to have that one-on-one interaction. I know that. What I was hoping for is that, this report will detail, obviously, the costs. And yes, there's initial setup costs, but I think we're going to see some of these costs anyway in the development of the Hills Hub. It's not quite finished, as in there's some things need to be done already, and that will be catered for anyway. So some of those costs, I don't know, I think would be addressed. It's not solely contributed to customer service presence, but I think we will have to do some of these things like CCTV. That will be done. I'm hoping it will be done, irrespective of, but to have that attached to this, I think some of the figures can be adjusted to really realistically focus on the cost of delivering this. So I'm asking councillors to defer this. Obviously, we've got some really good partners with the Hills Hub. That is the Hills Hub Advisory Committee, and before council considers putting customer service in that building, I think we should consult with the advisory committee, because they're obviously partners with the building and they play a key role in what that building would look like. Back in 2013, when we started the design of the Hills Hub, council commenced the design process, and there was a motion of council that when we look at the design of the Hills Hub, that if council was to go down this path, that would be catered in this new building. And for whatever reason, that has not occurred in this final design of the Hills Hub. That's why we see, I suppose, necessities, if we are to go down this path, some modifications, renovations to that space if we were to deliver that. But that was the intention back in 2013, that the design would include that. But that has not happened. But I asked councillors, I think this council, will be a good thing for our Hills community to have that access for residents. We're not it's quite interesting. A lot of councils do have customer service satellite centres. You look at Casey, they've got one at Cranbourne. They used to have one at Narre Warren South as a contact point. I'm not too sure the current status of that. Also, Yarra Ranges has got them. And when you look at, once you've implemented it, I'm looking at the models, and I think Model 3 is probably fair enough. Initial cost of $285,000, and every year after that, $135,000. I think that's quite a reasonable figure to improve access to council services, customer service, their customer experience. We know that the Hills community, it's fair to say, very rarely go north-south, particularly Emerald and Cockatoo residents. I may be wrong, but I know there's a lot of east-west along the Wellington Road and along Belgrave, Gembrook Road and so forth along there. And they don't, unfortunately, interact with down south where our civic centre is. So this will provide an opportunity on a part-time basis. And that's all I'm asking for, part-time basis and further consideration at the next council meeting in April 2020 after we consulted with the Hills Hub people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I will go to Councillor Schilling to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to thank Councillor Owen for bringing this alternate up to to Council today. The main purpose to second this item today was for debate to be heard. We do know this is a topic that Councillor Owen has been incredibly passionate about and has put a lot of hard work and effort into it, and I think that it's only healthy and important for the community to be able to hear debate on what we do here at Council. There are aspects I can't at this point in time support this alternative, mainly for two main reasons. My thinking is around the ongoing financial cost. We're probably at a turning point in terms of council finances, and if we look at our long-term modelling, where I'd feel uncomfortable personally supporting the ongoing spend. And I also have some concerns around equity around some of our other peripheral, more regional areas within our shire. Particularly, we have areas down around up Bunyip and down Lang Lang as well, that could potentially, if we're doing something like this here, if we have to multiply that cost, that would be quite significant. There are aspects that I would be more than happy to work with council on. Excuse me. So I'd be quite supportive of looking at just that initial infrastructure around there, because we do know that council officers from time to time do go out and consult with residents, and if that was to be a place where occasionally a resident would want to meet with an officer, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in potentially looking at infrastructure, but in terms of having a presence up there, I think at this point in time it's not something I could commit to, but I'm very interested in hearing everyone else's debate on this topic tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Any other councillors would like to speak to this item? Councillor Ryan.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Owen, for presenting this motion. I'm not in support of this. I think the expense is something that we really need to look at, and ongoing expenses. And it may be a great idea for the start, but whether it's an ongoing presence for staff to be up there would depend on the community themselves. We've also got to look in other areas that need the same thing happening. So if you're doing one area, you need to look at Coorierup, you need to look at down Lang Lang, you need to look at the type of people that would use it, and the access that they would have. And I'm considering senior people in what access they would have to transport, getting back and forth, because our transport's not really great in some of those areas. And so as much as I think, with advanced technology, we've got to look at things like this, but for this year in particular, I don't think that we have enough in the budget to even extend to that stage. But I'm quite open to hearing back the information on what the costs are, what's entailed, and I think that's really important for all councillors to have that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any other councillors that would wish to speak to this item? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I won't be supporting this amended motion either this evening, simply because of the cost involved in this. I've also been a councillor in the Ranges Ward for the previous 7 and a bit years, and yes, I have been approached at different times about having some sort of service centre within Emerald, but it's not a significant number of people. It's a very low number of people. I however, feel that if we were to go out and ask the advisory committee, which are the users of the Hills Hub, I'm pretty certain that if most people are asked that question, they'll go, yes, please, because that's human nature. If you're offered something, human nature will go, yep, I'd like that. Whether or not you use it is a different matter altogether. We've already been told that rate capping is starting to bite our budget, and that in the very near future, probably the next council, they will have to look at our service provision and where to trim it back. So I think if we were to go ahead with providing a service centre in Emerald now, we are setting up a future council for failure on that level. It is a significant amount of money, 130-odd thousand, and sorry, I can't find the exact figure at the moment. Every year, year on year, that is a considerable amount of money. For a part-time service, the report says that there's only 7% of our contact with council is done at the front counter here. So if you do the sums, 7% of the population of emerald cockatoo isn't a great number of people. So if you multiply or divide that out by how much it's going to cost you per year to have that service available, it's a pretty expensive service for that 7% of the population. So I can't support it purely because I don't think we can afford it. It would be a nice to have, but realistically at the present moment with rate capping the way it is, I don't think we can afford it.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to thank the councillors for recognising that in Port Ward, maybe it might be needed down there as well if we go to the Emerald, and it could be as far away as Lang Lang and, of course, Bunyip as well. While I acknowledge and respect my fellow councillor, Councillor Owen, for his enthusiasm and keenness in this particular item, I know it's been one of your aspirations since 2012, which is some 7 to 8 years ago, and things have changed though. We've got to be more adaptable to our technology today. That's why where our funding is spent on our technology, which is through our websites. And I know myself, if I have to come to council to do something, it'll be for a planning issue, which means I will spend a lot of time here and come to see a planner and come down here for one item probably in my lifetime to come to council. So most of it, as I recognise Councillor Wilmot and Councillor Ryan mentioning, that's mainly for payments. So other than the funding, and I can see the funding being one issue, but I think the practicability to saying, would their time be efficiently used up in in this hub area to be up there, to just be up there, and for a small amount of people, I believe. So I hear. So I won't be supporting this, unfortunately, Councillor Owen, but I still acknowledge your enthusiasm. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other councillors? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just acknowledging that Councillor Owen has had this as one of his aspirations in his second term as a Ranges Ward councillor, and I know with all his heart, he puts in on this thing. But when I step back and look at this, I have a look at things like, if you have a look at, let's say, the distance between here and Emerald, 21 kilometres. Between here and Lang Lang, it's 35 kilometres. It's 30 kilometres to Bunyip. It's 28 kilometres to Cooey-Rup from here. So for those residents who make up numbers like in Emerald, and I realise Cockatoo and Gembrook, that area has probably, I think it's almost 12,000 people living in those areas. So the need in that area to say have a hub there would be, in an ideal world, you'd be able to if you had endless money, you could justify it. But when you have a look at Cooey-Rup and Lang Lang, you've got, I think it's nearly 6,000 people living between the two. Then you have a look at Bunyip, Garfield and Narnagoon down that way. You've got, I think it's about 7,000 people or 6,000 people in that area if you take into account Mary Knoll and some of those areas as well. Maybe not quite that many. But in all fairness, if you give it to one, you've got to give it to the others as well. And if you have a look, if it's going to cost us $285 to set one up, and you set up one down at Lang Lang, Cooey-Rup and Bunyip and Garfield, you're probably looking the best part of $750,000, $800,000. Then the ongoing cost would be, I think it was mentioned, $130,000 a year for a part-time person. On speaking with our General Manager, Jenny Cicluna, earlier, she pointed out that at the moment, how these things work in the areas that are outside of here, if people have a question in relation to, say, planning, what they'll generally do is, before they put the application in or at the start of the application, they might come into council to talk. If there was an issue with the application going on during that time on site or something, quite often they could make an appointment and our staff would go up there and talk with them about the issue that is with the application. So we actually have a service at the moment that inside our payment for our officers, we actually provide that at the moment. Having someone situated up there, I know we've had this discussion before, I just don't know where we'll find the money for it. With rate capping, we basically do things amazingly well on this council. And then every time we add, particularly things that are on an ongoing cost every year, in the end we'll be pushed to ask for an exemption to go above the cap, because you'll have no other option unless you start cutting things. I think the service at the moment, with all fairness, is as fair for the Emerald people as the Lang Lang Kuirup people and the Bunyip Garfield people. I don't know how we could justify having that extra expense on an ongoing basis every single year. And anyway, I've put those things forward. In an ideal world, we'd do it all. We'd put one everywhere without a problem. But unfortunately, the money only goes so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do I have any other councillors that wish to speak to this item? There being none, I'll just say a few words. Firstly, I will support Councillor Owen in this decision. It's not a final decision on what we're going to do for the hub here, but Councillor Owen has asked if we defer this item for further consideration and consultation, and I'm happy to support that. In saying that, the feel of the room, if this, I foreshadow that if this item is lost, that I'll move the officer's recommendations for the item. If the alternative motion of Councillor Owens is lost, so I'm just foreshadowing that. If there's no other councillors that wish to speak to this item, I'll go back to Councillor Owen to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all councillors for your comments. Just picking up on some of the comments, the expense, ongoing expenses, and councillors are currently going through the budget at the moment, deliberations, and part of that, council will consider increases in staff numbers. So we're doing that already in relation to staff and new people involved and needed in this council to provide the services that our community needs. So I'm pretty sure we're envisaging additional customer service officers in the future. Are we saying that we're not going to do that? This is additional customer service officers, but in the Hills Hub, and that will be probably the most of the fair cost in that annual budget of about $135,000 is wages. So, and these people, customer services officers, they won't be sitting doing nothing when there's no one coming in. They will be connected, I would hope, with the appropriate IT and helping the officers here manage those phone calls and inquiries. So that's my understanding how it works in other customer service areas, and I envisage them to be quite busy. You build it, they will come, they will provide, this will provide our customers, our ratepayers, I should say, and our residents a better experience, a more accessible point with council. As I said before, there's comments about Kuirup and Lang Lang. If the ward councillors want to advocate for that, I'm happy for that, and I would support that, because it's improving access to services. And if you want to do that, Port Ward councillors, please do. I'm doing that for my Hills communities. So we know public transport to get to Officer from Cockatoo, Emerald is not flash. I think it's more east-west is the public transport system up in the hills. So I think it's a challenge for all residents to access our services. So I think that's another argument to give people an option. I think customer service should be a priority of council when we do budgets. We spend millions and millions on rec reserves, millions, and I've supported them in the past. But $136,000 annually in improving access to services across the hills. I think that is a very sensible and reasonable spend to improve services for our hills community. So yes, this has been something I've tried to push forward, and now it's come to a close decision, so which is good. So I encourage councillors to consider just deferring it. Yes, I think I take the point of Councillor Wilmot's comment that if we go to the advisory committee, I'm sure they will say yes. The reason why I'm asking them is because they're key stakeholders in that building, and I don't want to, if I say push this motion forward, I want customer service in the hills. I think that's not respecting them and the partnership that we have with them in the Hills Hub. So I want to ask them whether they think it would work. Maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe they don't want council there in the Hills Hub. But I think it's worthwhile speaking to them. And yeah, it is priorities. We're going through a budget. This report will be a great report if any other council in the future wants to consider this, no doubt. I think it's a really good report, and it's really up to the council of the day if they want to implement that, whether it's in the hills or somewhere else. So thank you for the officers for preparing it. It's really good. We've got an ability for our residents to have a look at the report, listen to the podcast or the live stream at some stage in relation to the discussion. So I think that's a really good thing. So I just ask for a deferment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillors, I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the item lost. Division. All those in favour, please stand. This is Councillor Owen, Brett Owen, and Councillor Jeff Springfield. All those against, please stand. Councillor Colin Ross, Councillor Michael Schilling, Councillor Letitia Wilmot, Councillor Graham Moore, Councillor Jodie Owen, and Councillor Carol Ryan. Thank you. I'll now move item 3. Once again, customer feasibility presence at the Hills Hub feasibility report. I move that Council 1 notes the customer service presence at the Hills Hub feasibility report, and 2 does not proceed with a pilot to provide a customer service presence at the Hills Hub. Councillors, I won't speak any more to this item. We've had a whole robust discussion of it. I've basically. Oh, yes, sorry. That's a good point. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have a seconder, please, councillors? All right, Councillor Wilmot, I'll get to you. So, thank you. Back to me to summarise my... there's nothing further to add. We've had a robust discussion. Basically, we need to move forward, seeing as that previous item was lost, and so I've put this forward for discussions and voting. Councillor Wilmot, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor, but no, I don't have anything extra to add. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors that would like to speak again to this item? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on this issue, I mean, if you really want to break it down and have a look at the expense it would cost, if you had 1,000 people go through and go to the desk to ask questions, it'd cost you $135 a question.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'll call a point of order. What's the relevance of this? We've had that discussion already.
Okay, so is this for Colin to answer? What's the relevance of this? Is for me to answer?
These are two...
I'm calling a point of order, Mayor, because we've already had the discussion about whether or not to provide the service in the Hills Hub. So the figures that Councillor Ross is currently talking about don't have any relevance to the new motion that's on the table.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilmot. My ruling on this point of order, I'll let Councillor Ross speak more to this item. Thank you, Councillor Ross. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking to this second motion, the other one was the alternate motion. Speaking to the substantive motion, I'm raising something different about it. It says we will not proceed with the pilot. So therefore I'm going to go into some figures in relation to why we shouldn't go ahead with the pilot. So speaking to this motion separate from the other motion, and I'm not dumping them onto each other, because this is actually, one was asking for a deferment. This one here is asking to not proceed. So that's what I'm going to speak to, why we shouldn't be proceeding, not why we should be deferring it to let... and in fact, in some ways, the previous discussion was merely about deferring it. So we can
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Please, you're welcome to speak to the item, so please continue.
That's what I'm doing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you have a look at this in dollars and cents, if you actually have a look and there's 1,000 people visit that desk, it's going to cost you $135 a person to visit. If only 500 people visit, you're going to pay $270 a person. And as was pointed out by Councillor Wilmot, and in the report, there's only 7% of people actually at the moment who come to the front desk to actually talk about things in person. I just think in an ideal world, we'd put these things everywhere. I mean, Pakenham East. I mean, you even have an argument that Pakenham should have 2 sites, because there's basically going to be another 4,000 houses built in Pakenham East. And for some of those people, they won't even be able to get over here because there's no train connection, there's probably no bus connection, and unless they can walk about 6 or 7 kilometres, they couldn't even get over here. And they've actually got a bigger population anyway. You're going to finish up with 40,000 people over there, 40,000 over this side, and so they have an amazing argument to have one over there as well. But anyway, I just think this will just put further pressure on the budget, as was pointed out by Councillor Owen, that it's a matter of where we put staff and the cost that would come from those staff. I just think until we have maxed out at this place and all the money we spend on digital connection between people is exhausted, and the demand is so great that our customer service says we really can't deal with the community anymore and we need to do something different. I just think this model is going to really struggle to stack up, because something will have to go in the end. And this is an ongoing fee too. It's not one that's a one-off one. You've got to pay it year by year. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other councillors wish to speak? There being none, I will... yes, Councillor Owen, yes?
Sorry, Mayor. I wish to vote against this motion, obviously, for obvious reasons. I would like to see a customer service presence out of the Hills Hub for the reasons outlined previously. We talk about financials, and that's fair enough. So I look forward to the budget discussions. Obviously, financials is very important. I think our community would like this, need this to improve access to council services. There is a number of different options, and irrespective if this goes up or not, I definitely would like to see a system of being able to book to see a planner or other sort of council sort of departments if a resident wants that. I really want to see that. The Hills Hub was built for that connectivity, bringing the community together, and council. We've got for a 3-year term anyway a placemaker as Hills Hub. So I think that will provide another element, at least if, this obviously will go through tonight, but we need to ensure that have a system in place, whether it's online, a booking system, a formal process, that if a resident wants to meet with a council officer, there is capacity, there is a process, whether it's, 2 afternoons a week, a block or something like that. The Hills Hub is definitely designed for that, and I would hope that is able to occur at the very least. But I wanted to see presence of customer service in the Hills Hub, and I've tried, and I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. If there are no other councillors to speak to this item, I will summarise. I agree with Councillor Owen in that I would really like to see the availability of someone to book in to see a planner or a statutory type, something that's relevant, and I think we can deliver that. I believe it's built for that. We're an activity-based workplace here in the Civic Centre, and speaking to officers, they all seem quite enthusiastic towards the idea of being able to deliver some of their face-to-face meetings out in this new facility. So I would like to see that happen myself too, Councillor Owen. That's all, councillors. I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the item carried. All councillors in favour, please stand. It's Councillor Ross, Councillor Schilling, Councillor Wilmot, Councillor Moore, Councillor Owen, Councillor Ryan, and Councillor Springfield. All those against? Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, councillors. Before we commence the next item, can I please have a motion to call for nominations to take the position of chair temporarily for the purposes of item 4, as I wish to raise an alternative resolution to this item. Councillor Ross. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wilmot.
I was just going to move that the Deputy Mayor,
okay,
Graham Moore.
That's the next bit.
Yeah, be that.
No, that comes in the next bit, but thank you, Councillor Ross. No, you're not voting for anyone yet. So we're only moving a motion for me to vacate the chair, not to put someone in there yet. But so back to that. We're going to move it in a second. All those in favour? I declare that carried. I will now vacate the chair and appoint the CEO as the returning officer for the purpose of electing a temporary chairperson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Springfield. Now we're up to the bit where we seek nominations for the temporary chair to chair item 4. Councillor Ross, seconder. Councillor Schilling, thank you. Councillor Ross, who would you like to nominate?
I'll nominate the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you.
Thank you. Assuming, Councillor Schilling, that you second that nomination.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favour of Councillor Moore taking the temporary chair? Thank you.
It's been a while. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. I will now move to item 4. Sorry, Mr Mayor. I'll now move to item 4, withdrawn by Councillor Jeff Springfield. Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council endorse a revised special rate and charge scheme policy. 2, endorse the basis of appointment of costs for schemes utilising the federal funded Sealing the Dandenong Ranges and Surrounds program, being a fixed contribution of $7,000 per benefit unit. 3, endorse the program assessment criteria and associated priority lists for the Sealing of the Dandenong Ranges and Surrounds program and associated future schemes priority program with the further inclusions of A, the section of Stewart Road Emerald from Monbrook Road to Nemelius Street to be added to the future schemes program list, and B, Beenack East Road, Gembrook, be included with the roads that are not subject to a special charge scheme. And 4, acknowledge Huspel Road and Bessie Creek Road from the Road Development Program of June 2019 are included on this priority list to now be jointly funded by Council and the Sealing the Dandenong Ranges and Surrounds program. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jodie Owen. Back to you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Moore. So we've gone this slightly unusual process because I wanted to move this motion myself and with a slight alternative added there to vacate the chair and such. But this item, it's something we've been working on for a long time. So it's an amazing announcement that we had last year, the $300 million to seal a number of roads across the Dandenong Ranges, $150 million of which is a portion to Cardinia Shire, and the other half goes to Yarra Ranges Shire. This is a huge program. This is a massive program for our Shire, and we've been working hard ever since the announcement of this to try and come up with the blueprint to launch this, right, to move forward with it. So first of all, I would like to thank and acknowledge the federal contribution to this, for without that, this would not be possible, and it is well received by the entire community of the Hills. Secondly, I would like to thank to the hard work that's gone in from Andrew Barr and his team to really put this list together and work out the way of which to prioritise and meet the needs across the entire region to best fit this program. My alternative motion only adds 2 additions to it, which are things that talking to Andrew and his team were meant to be on the list. They weren't on the list when it came to this report today, so I've included them for transparency and to make sure that it's all listed and done as is. So that's the only changes we're really making to the recommendations here. Again, this thing, there's been a lot of work gone into it, and it's all due to the fact that it's one of our number one problems we hear from residents at council is the unsealed road network. We've been hearing this since I ever got to council. I heard it before I got to council, and the councillors around this table that have been here for many more years than myself have certainly heard it for many more years than I have. This is going to go a long way towards solving this problem for the long-term future of sealing, approximately 10 kilometres of roads within the Dandenong Ranges. And it's going to be a massive flow-on effect. All of a sudden, all those roads that are now sealed, we don't have to maintain anymore. So we're going to be able to pull our resources to better adequately address the remaining roads within the region. We're going to get so much benefit out of this. I can't express how much I support this program moving forward. Chair, I will leave this to you now to take any other councillors that wish to speak to this item for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Well spoken. I'll go to the mover, Councillor Jodie Owen. Seconder, Councillor Jodie Owen. It's been a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Very simply, I'd like to commend the Mayor on picking up that this was actually missing from the report, because I think in current times it is vital that we are open and transparent in what we do as a council, and by doing this our residents will absolutely know what we are doing, what roads are being upgraded and the ones that sadly didn't make the list. I might be a Central Ward councillor, but I do use the roads in the hills to get to work, and tonight coming here was actually a bit scary because they're in not great condition. So this is a very welcomed package from the federal government. It will really help our residents, and I think that's important. It's good for Cardinia Council to be able to say this has been done, but the people who are going to actually benefit are the residents who live, work and travel around these townships every single day. So I'm pleased to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen. Any other speakers either for or against? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to call you Mayor, but I didn't. I remembered in time. I'm in support of this report tonight, and like everybody else, I thank the staff involved, particularly Andrew Barr. The amount of work that's going into this project is absolutely phenomenal. And if you sit and look at the maps and look at the roads that are proposed, the ones that aren't, you could send yourself absolutely crazy. So I commend them. And this is not the first draft. There's been several drafts of this proposal already. And I'm sure as the project progresses over the 10 years or the 9 years, there will be changes to this list. Some of these streets won't get up. The residents may say, no, sorry, we want to keep our dirt road. Not sure why, because this is a great opportunity, and it'll probably never ever happen again where residents have the opportunity to have their roads sealed at a maximum cost of $7,000 is just a phenomenal. It's any other time you'd be looking for 12 to 14 minimum. So this is a really good opportunity for residents. I know for some it'll be still a financial struggle, but it's an opportunity that we've got here to get as many roads sealed as we possibly can. Having lived in the middle of Cockatoo for over 20 years on an unsealed road, I can tell you what it's like to live through a hot, dry summer. When in 3:30 in the afternoon, when mums all head out to go and pick up their kids, the dust starts. By the time they come home with the kids, then your workers start coming home. By 6 o'clock when you're sitting down to a meal, your house is full of dust. There's a cloud of dust outside, so you can't go outside and enjoy the fresh air because it's filled with dust. You go to bed at night, your bed's all covered in dust, so you can smell it even when you're sleeping. So to have the opportunity to make the residents in the hills' quality of life slightly better, because they won't have that whole layer of dust hanging over their heads, is a fantastic opportunity. And I'd also like to thank the federal government for supplying this funding and making this opportunity available. I certainly do hope residents take up the opportunity to have their roads sealed. Despite the contribution that they will still have to make, it is a bargain, as I said. It will increase the value of their properties, and it'll make their lifestyles so much better. no more potholes, no more corrugated roads when it's dry. It's just going to increase the wear and tear, well, not increase the wear and tear, lessen the wear and tear on your cars, increase the lifetime of your car. So it's a great opportunity. I hope people do take the opportunity. And as has been said, there are roads that aren't being included on this list at this present time. But hopefully, at some point along the line, they may be able to, because at the moment we're still working on guesstimates, pretty good estimates, but they are estimates all the same. So there may be some savings along the way as well. And as I said, there may be roads that drop off, allowing other roads to be added to the list. So it's a bit of a moving list, and we'll hopefully get the first few roads up and progressing in the next few months. So stay tuned. This is a great opportunity for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Pradhan. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. As all councillors, I totally support this, and I thank the federal government. $150 million over 10 years. That's a massive commitment. And I think it demonstrates, you know, when two governments, and sometimes three, but not in this case, you know, can really work well together for a great outcome. And, you know, hopefully, you know, we may see, you know, additional money in the future. You know, if we show and demonstrate the great outcomes that we envisage will occur, it'll be great to get further allocations, because, you know, obviously we're going to disappoint some people tonight. Their road, you know, won't be listed in tonight's papers. But can I reassure people, obviously we've gone through a really hard, stringent type process in categorising and prioritising, and all that information is on our website, and I encourage you to have a look at that, because I know some people will be upset. Already I'm getting emails going, you know, why isn't our road on? So, as Councillor Wilmot did say, you know, we'll see some changes. We'll see some roads not go ahead, and hopefully that will open some opportunities. Hopefully more funding comes in over the coming years as well. I think $150 million is a great investment from the federal government, and they'll see some great results. So we're envisaging 109 kilometres of road will be sealed. We know we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more, and it'll be great to tackle those in the future. But this is a fantastic program, something that I don't think, you know, this council has seen for decades. We had a Connecting Cardinia program in 2003 where I think 50 Ks was done. A lot of money was borrowed, but this is another outcome, a fantastic outcome. So I thank the officers as well, and I just encourage residents to have a look at all the information, have a look at the report, look at the assessments on the website, so hopefully get an understanding why, you know, these roads, particularly the ones not being done by special charge schemes, they are strategic roads that will have greater community benefit. So I think residents will benefit from, you know, these strategic roads. They will, even though they don't live on that road, they will benefit because they're not travelling on those roads. So thank you, officers, and I support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pradhan. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Colin Ross. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I think it's an amazing opportunity to have $150 million pledged by the federal government over it was a 10-year period, but it's down to a 9-year period. So in the first 4 years we'll get 25 million, and then the following 5 years we'll get another 125 million in the back end. And I must say that 109 kilometres of roads in the first amount of this is going to do amazing works for the hills. I know that they really struggle, whether it's weather, whether it's dry. Their roads are up and down like yo-yos. I must say, when you have a look at the whole program here, our officers have done the most amazing job to try and work out which roads should be in, which ones shouldn't be in. I think there's 164 roads that they've identified over the whole package of $147 million that they've taken into account. I think it is really good that the community are going to take ownership of this as well with the special charge scheme in some of the cases here, because that allows you to take some ownership in it, and then you feel like you've been part of the whole thing, and that's a little bit extra that we can, I suppose, if you add all that up at the end of it, the extra that they put in, we'll put in the extra roads in addition to what the federal government can afford to do. Anyway, I must say I look forward to seeing this. It's been really interesting to hear my fellow councillors discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the arguments for roads that should be in and shouldn't be in. In an ideal world, there'd be so many in, but unfortunately, you've just got to look for the ones that are going to give the greatest amount of benefit to the most people, and they're going to be linkages that will link up made roads with made roads. So therefore, you will be able to drive through the hills on one sealed road all the way through, instead of having these gaps at the moment where there's dirt roads in between. I must say too, as an interface council, it's quite interesting, as 50% of all Victoria's population boom comes to the interface councils like Cardinia Shire, and as our roads get busier and busier, alternate routes that people look forward to are coming up all the time. And it was as presented by some of our councillors how the amount of people who drive down some of these roads that might only have 30 or 40 people on them can be up to 450 people a day driving up and down the roads. So they are heavily used. They do need to be upgraded for the residents who live there, and for the whole of the Shire we need these linkages. Anyway, I look forward to it. I think it's an amazing report that's come up. I think the officers have done a great job. I must thank the federal government, because without them we could only do a very small portion of this without them. So that needs to be noted too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other speakers on this subject, for or against? Before I go back to the mover, I'm feeling very comfortable here, Mr. Mayor. Just before I go back to you, I'd just like to say I wanted to thank my fellow councillors, particularly the Ranges Ward councillors who worked very well with the Port Ward councillors, that's where the major part of our unsealed road networks are, in debating fairly. It's an extensive process. And it was a big job done by Andrew Barr and Peter Benesic. And I want to, Peter, could you pass on our thanks to Andrew Barr for the extensive work they did? Because without the $150 million of the federal funding, this wouldn't happen. It's such a great news story of being involved in unsealed roads in all my council career. This is just such a great story, and it's going to be a really good one for us as a council. To get those links, and it is, as Councillor Ross pertained to, it's linking bitumen roads together, which takes the pressure off our unsealed road program, and that's got to be really recognised, and that's been an extensive process to get to that where we are today. So it's really great to see it coming to fruition if we get the vote across the line. But I'll go to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And thank you to my councillors for their words of support and towards this program. Everyone said it, hit the nail on the head. This is going to be great. What we're going to achieve once we deliver these roads package is going to be a bit of life-changing for many residents throughout the Hills region, and for even the residents that drive through these roads and these connector roads. It's going to really help us with the network and the issues that we face with the unsealed road network. Yeah, this is the first blueprint how we're going to launch this program. And as my fellow councillors pointed out, there are roads that are on this list that will not go through, likely, in the end, once we've gone through the consultation process and to assess the appetite that the residents have in these particular areas. This is just the first step of the process. So it's not going to be forced upon roads. If there's a majority of support to not have their roads sealed, then that will be taken into account. And when that happens, there'll be other roads that will be brought into the mix, because the assessment of the roads that fall just beyond this list, it's extensive. This is only tapping into 20% of the unsealed road network, 25% maybe that we have, if that. So there is plenty of roads to do. And I know that some people would be disappointed when they don't see their name on the list, but please be assured this list will be moving as time progresses. It is such a big program. There's no way we can draw out a map for it right now and deliver the exact map in 10 years' time. It is going to be changing, but this is the blueprint that we're going to launch with, and we're going to start to follow. And also, when we're estimating our costs and with the amount of $150 million, even if we take 10%, plus or minus, it's going to change. That's $15 million, just having a contingency plan there. So we may very hopefully we'll have we won't spend all these funds on this roads and we'll have more in the budget, but it's again we'll have to wait and see. This is basically what we're going to launch with the initial program, and it's been hard worked on by councillors and the council staff. So I really believe this best meets the community needs with what we have in front of us, and I hope that the community and my fellow councillors feel the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. When it comes to the vote on this item, all those in favour? For? Against? Carried. Before moving to item 5, I wish to vacate the chair to allow the Mayor to return for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for jumping in and fulfilling that role for me, and thank you to all my councillors and the gallery for helping us go through this procedural stuff. It's a bit of practice, a bit of something a little bit different, but look, it was something I felt that I wanted to do, so thank you for allowing me to do so to my fellow councillors. Item 5. Proposed relocation of Pakenham Tennis Club to the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre, withdrawn by Councillor Schilling. Councillor Schilling to move.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council 1 supports the relocation of the Pakenham Tennis Club to the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre, enter the draft user agreement, enter the Memorandum of Understanding with Align Leisure to act on behalf of Council, and agree to amend Align Leisure's contract with Council to enable the relocation of the Pakenham Tennis Centre to the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Ryan. Oh, I'll go back to Councillor Schilling to speak. Sorry, I'm writing my notes and not paying attention. Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ryan, too, for seconding this item tonight. This has been an item that's been on the Central Ward agenda since his term of council started in late 2016. It was one of our first meetings as a council was actually with the Pakenham Tennis Club to discuss this. So it's great that 3 and a bit years later we've reached a point where we're able to bring this to council tonight. Councillor Ryan and myself have been meeting with the Pakenham Tennis Club committee regularly, particularly in the first 2 or so years of our council term, to negotiate a great outcome for the club and the wider Cardinia tennis community. So I'd like to also thank all the stakeholders who have been at the table, who have helped on this journey so far, and there are people, other councillors as well, who have been involved in this process. Tonight I'm asking councillors' support to relocate the Pakenham Tennis Club from the Anderson Street facility to the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre, and to approve the draft user statement between the Pakenham Tennis Club, Align Leisure and Council. Whilst I'm happy to see this outcome before Council, I would like to acknowledge that it has been a difficult journey for the Pakenham Tennis Club, and it's certainly my priority to ensure the Pakenham Tennis Club won't miss out when it does relocate, if passed tonight, to the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre. As I mentioned before, these negotiations have taken place over a 3-year period, and during that time we've been explored in great detail the needs of the Pakenham Tennis Club, as well as the importance of the club being able to retain their local identity, culture, and preserve historical items such as awards, ribbons from the Anderson Street site. The initial request for the relocation came from the Pakenham Tennis Centre back in July 2016, and since then Council have been working with the club, Tennis Victoria and Align Leisure to try and reach a workable solution for all parties involved. And I say again that it has been a long journey for the Pakenham Tennis Club, but I believe this relocation is the best option moving forward. The current facilities at Anderson Street are insufficient. They need significant work to be put up to any sort of standard, and it's unsafe, and it doesn't comply with the most basic disability access and inclusion standards. And the classic example of this the staircase leading up to the club room. So it pretty much rules out anybody with mobility impairment to access the club facility. In contrast, the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre is a much more modern facility, and it also holds room to growth for the Pakenham Tennis Club. For this transition to take place, this report does suggest that Council commit to a number of actions. And these actions have been very important for the Pakenham Tennis Club to be able to move over, and these actions I fully support. The first action is around 4 courts at the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre to be resurfaced to a synthetic surface. It's also funding a extension of 82 square metres, and this is an important social space for the Pakenham Tennis Club to move over. The next part is at the tennis coach, which currently operates as a private business, currently operating at Anderson Street Court, will not form part of the relocation, and the development of an operational agreement between the Pakenham Tennis Centre, the facility management, providing clarity on the costs of the proposed relocation. Now, the important point of this is the courts to be resurfaced, which was very important to the Pakenham Tennis Club for that to happen. Now, there has been money budgeted for this, which will be complemented by an unused grant, which we're currently holding over for the Pakenham Tennis Club. That basically sums up what we're proposing tonight, but I'll be interested to hear other councillors' thoughts on this, and hoping that councillors will support this relocation after this long negotiation which has taken place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Ryan, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I'm in support of this. As Councillor Schilling has pointed out, that we have been working on this project with the Pakenham Tennis Club since 2016. And it was a very intense project, and we do acknowledge that it has been very, very difficult for the Pakenham Tennis Club because going back in history, they've been there at Anderson Street for a very, very long time. And the biggest thing that they were concerned about is their memorabilia and that they are able to make decisions if they move across as well and don't lose their identity. And so we worked very hard on that, and the officers, I commend them in all the hard work that they've been doing as well. I think some of the things, as Councillor Schilling pointed out, is that the building at Anderson Street is very much unsafe. I mean, I nearly fell down the stairs the first time I went up there. That could be because I wasn't putting my foot right, but the staircase was very slippery, and it was just really, it's not up to standard for people with disabilities. There's not a disability toilet facility there because it's all upstairs, and I'm concerned that people will injure themselves eventually because it is to that stage now. The Pakenham, the Regional Tennis Centre is top of the class range. I'm very proud to say that we've been part of doing that, and it is not utilised to the extent that it should be. And with this relocation, we've got to think about our residents, and our residents come first as far as tennis courts go and other identities within our community. If we can't service them, then we can't encourage other competitions coming in. So I think that's really important, that the 4 courts that have been requested by the Pakenham Tennis Club to a synthetic, it's a mouthful there, surface is mainly because of our senior players. Now, Pakenham Tennis Club have quite a few senior players that want to keep playing, and we talk about the livable plan, we talk about health and well-being, and if we don't service our seniors as well, then what hope have we got when we get to their age? There won't be much left for us if we can't service them now. So I'm in favour of the 4 courts being done, which was in negotiation. And as Councillor Schilling pointed out, that part of this proposal that the coach that is coaching at Anderson Street at this stage is a private business, but will not be part of this contract in the relocation. That in itself has been a very difficult situation, but we are running a business here and we have to make business decisions. And so it hasn't been very easy, not only it's been difficult for the Pakenham Tennis Club, but it's also been difficult for the officers in their negotiations and understanding what the Pakenham Tennis Club really is looking for. And they do need that social space as well. So I commend everyone that's been involved in this. I commend Councillor Schilling on his support and the work that he's done in partnership with me in working alongside the team and working alongside Pakenham Tennis Club to get them to the stage where they have accepted that they want to go across and they want to utilise some fantastic courts that are there to be used and for our future tennis players as well, and encourage national tennis within the future. So I'm in total support of this relocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I'll go to Councillor Jodie Owen to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start off by saying this sort of rose its head near the ending of our last term, and the sticking point was the coaching. So I want to very honestly commend Councillor Schilling and Councillor Ryan for being able to go to all the meetings that they have been able to go to all the work that the staff have done, to the work at both clubs, because we knew for ages that we had a beautiful regional tennis centre sitting there, but sadly it wasn't being used. And I'm guilty of that in part, as my son played tennis for numerous years and was not in a local club. But funnily enough, because the courts were not utilised, we played at Pakenham more than at the club he actually played for. So it's really nice to see that Pakenham will be able to go over and use this fantastic facility. I do feel a little bit sad for the relationship built with the coach that they were using, but as Councillor Ryan stated, it was an important business decision to make sure that the club could function properly by moving to the regional tennis centre. But I honestly want to thank my fellow councillors for your work, and I really believe this is a really big win for Central Ward, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do we have any other councillors that wish to speak? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was the first event I actually attended with Councillor Ryan and Councillor Schilling when they first got on council. We went down there to meet, and Councillor Owen came along as well at the time as the mayor, and we went down to meet with a club who were wondering what we were going to do with their facilities and whether or not we could upgrade them, or there were some options. The option was brought up that, and just going back in history here, people mightn't realise, but back in early 2010, when the facility was built costing $3.4 million, the original intent was for the club to move across way back then into the facility, as well as being used as a regional facility so other clubs could come and use it for finals or competitions and the such. Nevertheless, for whatever reason, back in 2010, the club decided that they'd rather stay where they were and they'd persist there. So therefore, council was left with a facility that basically had no club and was sitting there in the open. There was a huge amount of criticism over a white elephant that was sitting there not being used. I must say, back in 2016, Align Leisure came into this place, the regional tennis centre, and they increased the membership to 326. They increased the coaching at the facility up 75% to 245 people, and they increased their competition participation out of the centre too, from 20 people to 63. On the other hand, the Pakenham Tennis Club, unfortunately, over those 10 years, they had 250 members at the start 10 years ago. That dropped to 120 current members, and also too, their teams have declined from 13 teams down to 6 teams. And when you go to see the facilities, I have never seen a more non-all abilities facility. If you've ever gone up that ladder, you just know there is no way known anyone who has a disability could possibly play at that club. And also too, the capacity to do anything with the site is so restrained because there's so many users wanting to use it at the moment. Whereas down the road we have this wonderful facility that has a great clubhouse, and we've offered part of our budget to increase the size of the clubhouse to give the Pakenham Tennis Club a site within it, which would be their home. Also too, we've offered that one of the things they mentioned was there was synthetic grass courts there, and some of their older members would struggle to play on the plexi-pave courts, the plexi-cushion courts. Council have said over the period of time of the plan that we're going to change 4 of those courts to synthetic grass courts to help them with, so they've got something like for like in that area as well. I must say it took a little while for some of the people down at the club to come to grips with it, because basically a few people wanted to stay, but a lot of people who had a longer vision for the club said, what are we doing? We've got this old club, we don't have the money to expand it, and we, if we want things to get bigger and better and be a competitive club, we need to move. So some of them took the mantle up on the committee at the time, and they said to us, we'll go and talk with the rest of the club. And they did. They came back to a meeting. They took a vote at the time, which unfortunately was about 3.5 years ago now. And it's taken that long to try and nut down exactly, try and meet their needs so they could at least be the majority happy with this decision. What this does today, we're going to vote on to move this thing forward past the words and the talks and the reports and everything that seems that has sort of taken so long into the stage where it is actually going to happen. I must say, with so many people moving to our area too, space is at a premium, particularly all around. And if you've got facilities that are A-grade facilities that people can move into, that's wonderful. If we're willing to retrofit it to even make it greater for your club, that's even better. And with the old facility, we won't, and I must say, that club's gone for 60 years. The people who built it 60 years ago, like the Pakenham Hall at the time, it got a lot of use out of those years, and they did a wonderful job. I must say, I hope the new facility that they move into will last them 60 years as well, and they'll get just as much use out of it. And new residents who come to the area, instead of being restrained by having the minimum of courts with no growth in capacity, they'll see 18 courts there. And some of them will be mod tennis courts, grass tennis courts. So anyway, I hope my fellow councillors support this relocation and the draft agreements, and we can move forward with this, and we'll see tennis grow within Pakenham. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak to this up? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors, particularly obviously the Central Ward councillors, and particularly Councillor Ryan and Councillor Schilling. I know you've worked very hard on this, and it has taken longer than you hoped for, so I acknowledge that we're at this point now, and I say well done. You detailed the history, and it's a long history, and I know the club has a proud history, and I know tonight will be difficult for some members, because I know some of the members down there over many years, and I know they gave their heart and soul to that club. So this may, for Anderson Street, and this may be difficult for some members, but I know this is the decision of the club, and the club moving forward wants to embrace this idea. I just want to acknowledge the importance of tennis. When we're determining our budgets, we've got a lot of pressures, but tennis is a real legitimate sport. We've got hundreds of participants, sports people involved in our tennis club. It's great that down at Kooyurup we had a big upgrade. We're doing something here at Pakenham, but there's other tennis clubs that have been speaking to councillors and officers, whether it's Beaconsfield, they're talking to council about lighting and court resurfacing. The lighting at Beaconsfield is atrocious, and we need to look at that. Also, Officer. That's a growing club, as you know, Officers growing, but they're working with council to do a few things, lighting, maybe looking at resurfacing courts in the future. And I know there's other ways to do these improvements, whether it's council budgets, whether it's community capital works grants. So that's important. And also Emerald. has been talking to council through the Warrell Reserve Master Plan in relation to their needs. So I just acknowledge that it's a sport that we need to continue to invest in to improve, because it's great, and we need to embrace the change of the type of court services. The synthetic ones that Councillor Ryan was talking about, that is essential for this move, and it's essential for the existence of our other clubs as their participants get older. I know synthetic is very important. So I just wanted to note that this is one project, but we've got a number of other projects that council needs to consider, hopefully funding in the future to address the concerns that we have at other clubs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other councillors that wish to speak to this item? Councillor Ryan would like to add something. Thank you.
Just a short piece, Mayor, thank you, through you. I just wanted to add that I didn't mention before, the cost of the relocation is going to work out a lot cheaper than upgrading the courts at Anderson Street, and that was part of this decision with the team, that the costs had to come into it as to which was going to be the better option. And the fact that at Anderson Street, if the numbers went up, there was no place that they can extend at this stage. So so they were part of what the officers and Councillor Schilling and myself and the Pakenham Tennis Club were talking about, and that was part of the concern too. So so we had to take as I mentioned before, it was a business decision, and some people will be a little bit upset because, I mean, part of that history goes back for me. I used to play tennis there as well. So, but they will be relocated to a better facility that's going to have everything that they need from whatever age group, from juniors right up to seniors. And I think that's really important with our livable plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. If there's no other councillors that wish to speak, I'll go back to Councillor Schilling to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all other councillors for your supportive comments with this. So the money that's been budgeted for this project is around $500,000, which has been budgeted for, and that includes that extension, as I mentioned before, of the 82 square metres to give the club their own club room. Also within this contract that we are proposing is coaching services will be provided by Align Leisure, and it also includes the cleaning and the maintenance of the facility. So one thing which groups at times will struggle to do is around that constant need for fundraising, maintenance, upkeep. What this will ensure is the club will have a lot more time to focus on what they love, and that is playing tennis, without having to worry about the burden of having to maintain a facility. So overall, it's a great outcome for the club. There's been a lot of rumours around the future of Anderson Street. What will council do with it? I've heard people in the community tell me that it's going to be sold for townhouse developments, all sorts of things. I'd just like to put it on the record that that's all incredibly untrue. This is public land. Public land is very important. Public land should not be sold off, and particularly as we look towards the Pakenham structure plan, and we're looking at the PB Ronald master plan. That land is very important for community use. So we don't have a clear answer as to what will happen on that piece of land, but the master plan is being developed as we speak, so we will have some draft options for the community for a public consultation in the not so distant future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I'll now put this to a vote, councillors. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item number 6, Officer Kiln site at 365 Princess Highway Officer, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following. The council is prepared to accept the land associated with the Officer Kiln subject to the following conditions being met to council's satisfaction. 1, that the following information be provided by and paid for by Parkley, subject to council satisfaction. A, an updated heritage architect's report prepared by a suitably qualified heritage architect, conservator, which includes recommendations on, but not limited to, 1, the current conditions of the site, 2, the detailed works required for the structural conservation of the kiln and chimney in order for the structure to achieve a certificate of compliance under the Building Regulations 2018, Regulations 126. 3, a fully costed management plan for the kiln. 4, guidance on interpretive signage for the site. B, any works identified in the Heritage Architect's report are to be supported by a full schedule of estimated costings prepared by a suitably qualified structural engineer builder. C, a master plan of the site is to be prepared in consultation with the community and council detailing the future development of the land. D, the works identified in the master plan should be supported by the estimated costings of the proposed embellishments of the site. E, the transfer of land to council is to include all land as required within Lot 1 and Reserve 1 on PS 835703H, total area 1,759 metres squared, which is deemed necessary to undertake the master plan works. And finally, F, prior to the transfer of land, an agreed monetary contribution is made to council for the works required to the heritage building to achieve a certificate of compliance under Building Regulations 2018, Regulation 126, and as identified in the Heritage Architect's report, as well as the embellishment of the site as identified in the master plan. I move so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilmot. Back to you, Councillor Owen, to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wilmot. I thank you, councillors, for your patience while I read that out. I thought it was really important to read it out because it is quite detailed, and I just, anyone watching or listening, has got that information. So I want to acknowledge the President of the Officer and District Community Association, our current Senior Citizen of the Year, Mr. Rob Porter. So thank you. Thank you, Rob, for coming tonight, and thank you for your interest over a lifetime in relation to the kiln, so thank you for coming. I just want to provide a bit of a brief sort of history of where we sit at the moment. There's a long history, anyone who's followed it. So James Hicks Pottery Kiln is significant to Cardinia Shire as one of the Shire's 2 early terracotta manufacturing complexes, which still retains notable early elements and highlights development of extractive and secondary industries in the district. And I'm sure, Rob, if I'm incorrect, please fill me in, but this is the advice that I've got, okay? I'm sure you can share many stories over the years, but this pottery is an important district industrial site with remaining brick kilns and other structures associated with brick making, pipe making and pottery production from the post-First World War era. The site is also linked with locally important family Hicks. And also there's connections to the other side, on the other side of the highway as well. So it has been listed in council's heritage overlays for a large number of years. So to do anything, you need a permit on that site. And it's fair to say, over the years, our community have seen that site deteriorate. And it has been very upsetting for residents that that want to embrace history, celebrate history and preserve history as much as we can. We know officers growing like anything and changing, and the community wants to see this celebrated and restored. The kiln, the chimney aspect. We know the shedding's gone, and that doesn't have any heritage overlay. It's the kiln, and the immediate area of the kiln. And so council acknowledged that when we went through our heritage overlays. So the report sort of outlines so many events. In recent times, in 2017, there was a permit issued for a restaurant. But before that, there was an application to demolish it back in, I think it sort of started around 2015. Application which this council refused. And obviously that decision was upheld because council saw the real importance to really preserve that history of the kiln officers' history. So back in 2017, we saw a permit issued. I believe there was Vic Road's permission in relation to an entry in, at very least, and so a restaurant sort of permit was issued, which the community celebrated. We thought, here we're going to get a a restaurant celebrating the kiln, talk about the history, and what a great sort of facility for particularly officer residents wanting to go to a wine bar / restaurant. Unfortunately, that hasn't came about or flourished, and we've seen the site sort of for sale. But back in Tuesday, the 20th of November 2018, we saw massive winds go through Officer, and we saw the shedding come down, and this is where the concern really escalated with residents and council too. I've got to acknowledge council has been following this matter really with strong interest, and we're advocating on behalf of obviously the officer community, the Officer and District Community Association. We've been speaking with them since then. Really, it's come to a head. So we've been back in 2018, December, a month after the damage occurred, council passed a notice of motion that council, through the mayor, right to the Minister of Planning, the Honourable Richard Wynne, seeking urgent assistance to provide protection of the historic kiln and chimney located on the north side of Princess Highway in Officer, which was formerly part of the Hicks Pipeworks. The kiln is now exposed to the weather and is in serious risk of further deterioration through the neglect and assistance from the Minister in protecting this valuable landmark is urgently sought. So that motion was passed in December 2018, and I understand that the letter and the issue is still with the Minister, and we're still waiting a result. So in recent months, the owner of the land, which is Parkley, has come to council with this offer, and that offer is detailed in the report and responded to. As the landowner, we believe that they bought the land knowing that there was a heritage overlay on there, and the expectations of the council and the community that kiln chimney area needs to be preserved. So obviously in the report, council has responded to that offer of donating the land to council for the overall community benefit. I understand the same sort of offer was also given to the Officer District Community Association, but I think I know that they have read the council report, and they totally support the intentions of the motion. They want to help council. They want to help the developer to really do a really good thing and deliver this sort of heritage sort of recognition. So I call upon the developer to really work with council. Let's work through this. Let's make this a really good thing before it's too late. And we know it is at a critical time. So let's work with Parkley. Let's have a great outcome. Yes, there'll be costs associated with it, and the developer has been asked to provide those costs. But I think it's fair enough. They bought the land knowing the heritage significance. They've got a really good estate. Timbertop is a fantastic estate, and let's finish it off with this great history project. So I ask our councillors to support that, and we'll move on. So I welcome their comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll go to seconder. Councillor Wilmot to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to start by thanking Parkley for this offer, but sometimes offers have got a little bit of a hook at the other end of them. So I think it's very good that the officers have sat down and thought about the conditions outlined in this report before we accept that generous offer, because we don't want to be left with an issue that is well beyond our ability to finance or address later on down the track. This is a very important site within Officer, as the one across the road is also very important. But this site's been left to go to ruin, basically. So if the developer can come to the party and work with council and the community and can prepare the master plan and financially support the implementation of that master plan and the ongoing repairs, etc., then this will be a great asset to the whole community. It is important that we hold on to our heritage and our history. Once it's gone, it's gone. You can't rebuild history. So if we were to let this go and fall into a pile of rubble at the bottom of the road, it's gone. You can't rebuild that. So it is important that we do something. Hopefully, Parklea, the developer, will come to the party here and be able to find a use for this, because it could be a great asset to the community. And I have read the correspondence from the Community Association. They have given their full support to this report tonight, and that's very important as well. So I look forward to hearing the response from Parklea, and hopefully it'll be positive and we can step forward to saving this important site.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other councillors that wish to speak to this item? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must say this site, we have very few historical sites as being a very young country, and I must say when you get an opportunity to save some, particularly in very visible places, it's an opportunity that blinks before your eyes, and if it goes down, I can remember back in in November 2018 when the roof blew across the road. 3 of the CFA groups went down there to help pull it off the road. Took them 10 minutes to drag it off the road. And at the time, one of the residents said, "My greatest fear is it will go to ruin and claim demolition by neglect. If something is ignored for long enough, it can be demolished, even if it is looking to be heritage listed." And at the time, and the person also said the council has a duty to the community to make sure that they look after things like this. It tells a story about our past. And at that time, our mayor stood up, Councillor Graham Moore, and he actually said he vowed that he would do everything to secure this site. It's taken 18 months through a myriad of things. And he said, it is very disappointing to see. We're looking at where to go from here and how we can assist to have the site secured. So that started a chain reaction from that point, where council went into sending into Heritage Victoria and the minister to try and see if we could have it heritage listed. We did what we could to try and send a message to Parklea that we did value this site and we didn't want to see it go to rack and ruin. There were things put in the paper at the time. It was raised here on council and put on the record that we wanted to see something done. I think it is really good. I think that the CEO who spoke with us at a briefing earlier said that she felt that she can see light at the end of the tunnel here, and the fact that we can do something really good for the community and save this site and turn it into something that they can be proud of. Anyway, I will support this. I think it's a step forward, and it brings it back into our hands, so then we can do something about it. And with some good negotiating, I'm sure that Parklea can, considering on the deal that will be struck, they can put some money towards restoring it and turn it into something we can be proud of. Anyway, I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other councillors wish to speak to this item? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a short few comments. Being part of the local history reference group, and Councillor Owen is part of that as well, it's very important to us about history within our community, and we are losing a lot of our history that we're fighting very hard to keep and have that identity, because history is about not only what's now, but it's about back in my time, back in my grandparents' time, back in their grandparents' time. And if we lose that, then our youth are not going to learn about history. You can learn so much in a history book, but if it's lost in a history book, you need the people to talk about it that have experienced it. And I remember coming here in 1979 and bought some products from there, and it was the place to go. And it was a big social area as well. So great memories, but also I value the input and the hard work that's been here from Councillor Owen. Thank you very much for your presentation there. And I totally support this in favour because I think it's really important that we keep a lot of control over what we're doing within history, within our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Jodie Owen.
I feel it's a bit poignant to actually mention something because I do miss this former councillor, but former councillor David Young used to speak about riding his horses down past the pottery, and I think of people like him, and also because we do webcasts now, and in my daytime job, some of my students have found out what I do. They are apparently tuning in. So as a history teacher, it is so important that we protect our history. The History Reference Group does an amazing job, and I've got to say, Councillor Owen, you've done a fantastic job here, but so too have the officers, because not only have they been working away to secure this site, we've also been able to talk to and rationalise with the people opposite with the other kiln to ensure that that stays in a workable condition and people can see what it used to be. So I'd like to commend everybody on the hard work on this, and let's just hope that the CEO can engage in some excellent negotiations and we can get a fantastic outcome for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillors, is there any other councillors wish to speak? There being none, I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Brett Owen, to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all councillors for supporting this issue, the kiln. This will provide great opportunity. People might know that when the officer memorial gates were refurbished and celebrated with their project on the corner of Starling Road and Princess Highway, they were able to get some old bricks, Hicks bricks, to form part of the forecourt of the gates. And thanks, Mr. Porter and your team, made that happen. So we want to keep those connections of, bricks there came from the kiln over there just down the road. It is a landmark type prominent site, and what a great way to celebrate the history. So I want to start another community heritage project with the Officer and District Community Association, and I thank for their email that came today, basically supporting Council's report. They're saying that the project would have National Trust of Australia through the local Casey Cardinia branch support, and also support from the Berwick Pakenham Historical Society, willing to work with Council and the developer for the project. So I just call upon the developer to really work with us to let's make this happen. We don't want it to waste away, fall down. That would be devastating for our community. I want to thank the officers. I've been pushing the officers for this report because the urgency that we do have. So thank you to the officers to bringing the offer quite quickly to Council and have some really responsible actions to make it achievable. So I support so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I will now put this to a vote. All councillors in favour? I declare it carried. Moving on to item 7, contract 19/43 engineering design services for Princess Highway intersection upgrades, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Councillor Owen to move.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following: that the tender submitted by BG and E for the McMullen Road, Arena Boulevard and Thulis Road intersection designs be accepted for CT 19/43A engineering design services for Princess Highway intersection upgrades for the lump sum of $247,800 excluding GST. The tender submitted by Cardno, Victoria, for the Brunt Road, Whiteside Road, Bayview Road and Station Street, Timondale Road intersections designs be accepted for CT 1943B engineering design services for Princess Highway intersection upgrades for the lump sum of the amount of $372,890 excluding GST, and the remaining tenderers be advised accordingly, and the common seal of the council be affixed to the contract documents.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ross. Councillor Owen to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross. Just briefly, these intersections are so important. We need to get on with delivering these intersections. And because the officer and Cardinia Road Precinct structure plans identified these intersections to be upgraded. And thankfully, through the federal government announcement last year, they're giving us, or giving the community, the council, millions of dollars to bring forward these intersections. We know that these intersections are, most of these are over capacity now. Particularly, you look at Brunt Road, Princess Highway and Whiteside, that is at capacity now, and we know the volumes coming from the south, up to the highway, obviously all the new estates, that needs to be upgraded. So I'm really pleased that this tender will hopefully be announced tonight, and we'll go on to those detailed designs. It's not an easy job to design these massive intersections. In the long term, Princess Highway will most likely be upgraded to 3 lanes each way. We're building, obviously, at Timbertop Boulevard. That intersection was built to allow for that to become 3 lanes in each direction. So that's why these intersections are massive. Bayview Road's going to be massive. So we've got to go through, the contract focuses on the engagement of specialists, Vic Roads pre-qualified design consultants to complete all aspects of the detailed design. So that's feature surveys, geotechnical investigations, service proving and relocation recommendations, drainage, pavement design, footpath connections, signals and lighting designs, gaining Vic Roads Department of Transport approval. That's sometimes take a while, but we hopefully that sort of that's sped up, and allows for the development and delivery of the following deliverables: detailed design report, road safety audit, environment and planning report, technical specifications to be council and Vic Road standards, itemised bill of quantities, construction tender documentation, and construction estimate with updated to current day costs. So the tender that we hopefully will approve tonight will allocate these 2 lots of jobs to 2 different companies. And I actually think that's good. It's a massive job. So to spread it to 2 companies, I think is wise, not just giving the job to all, just to one. So we're going to see these intersections being designed. Can the General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment, Mr. Peter Benezik, just provide maybe some sort of time frames of, obviously designs being finished, works sort of starting? I know it depends on Vic Road's approval and so forth, but any idea, any sort of estimated sort of timelines of the delivery of these intersections?
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for your question, Councillor Owen. Our officers will obviously work diligently to deliver them as quickly as we possibly can. They'll be contingent on working through a number of requirements with the Department of Transport and making sure that the designs are managed and meet the compliance needs in that environment. I would imagine that these will be a number of months, possibly more, and given our current circumstances in relation to other events that are occurring, that might sort of delay them, but I would say that it'd be a number of months away. But our officers will obviously work as diligently as possible to make them happen as quickly as possible, taking on your concerns for the community.
Thank you, General Manager. Obviously that's the design, then we go through the construction stages, and a project just ahead of this one is the 2 intersections in Beaconsfield, O'Neill Road and Glissman and Beaconsfield Avenue at the highway. That's advanced to these intersections. The designs are almost complete. I think they're just at Department of Transport, Vic Roads. I think, is that correct, General Manager?
Through you, Mayor, I can advise that we're expecting those to come to Council at the next meeting, ready for tendering. So they're certainly in advance of these. I think they've been progressing for the last 6 months or in that space.
No, that's great news, and it just shows that this council is committed to delivering those intersections along the Princess Highway between Beaconsfield and Pakenham, and our community will appreciate it when they come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll go to Councillor Ross, the second to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must say, when I first got on council, Beaconsfield, Officer and Pakenham was all the one ward. It was really interesting back then because you had Pakenham, you had Officer in the middle, which was a real little town, and then you had Beaconsfield, which was sort of linked up with the Berwick end, but it was sort of, tucked away. Now we have a look at it. I mean, you can only have 5 to 6 families a day moving into an area for 10 years. In the last 2 years, you've had 6 families a day moving into an area, and it's all nearly linked up now into one big suburb that, you know, with different names. Hopefully we can keep synonymous little things about them that keeps their character, but still it is a growth corridor which is filling really quickly. And I must say, when they built the Monash Freeway, I saw people on the front page of the Pakenham Gazette that said no one will ever use Princes Highway again. It's desolate. There's no one going to use it. Well, I can tell you the amount of people who use it now is quite astounding. And if there's ever a problem with the freeway, they just turn straight down and use the Princes Highway. Now, what that means is with all the new suburbs, all the new estates and everything that are coming, the amount of usage has just exploded. I mean, we've got more schools per capita in an area than I think just about anywhere else in the state of Victoria for suburbs. The amount of participants who go to those schools is exploding as well. And at the same time, you've got families moving into the area which would like to be able to drive around there. I must say the upgrade of these 6 intersections has been so long awaited, particularly a couple of them that have been requesting it all the time I've been on council. Fortunately, a lot of them are federal roads, and the federal government opted to help out at the last federal election, which was great. And I must say, as a council, it's great to be able to assist with the putting money towards the design of these roads upgrades. I must say, if people want to know how things explode here in Cardinia Shire, if you have a look at the crossing on McGregor Road, it was designed for 750 cars a day to go down it. I'm pretty sure there's about 13 to 14,000 cars a day who go through that crossing at the moment. And I must say, and if you looked at all the roads in Officer and in Beaconsfield too, many of the side roads would have a very, very similar thing where when they were originally built, there was almost no one living out here using these roads, and now they're just exploded. They're used so much. So this is well overdue. I look forward to seeing the results on their designs, and I know that the people who live in those areas will be absolutely rapt to see these upgrades. I hope my fellow councillors support this. There's $600,000 in the total lot just in the design of these 6 intersections, because they're extremely important. So many families drive up and down them, and you want to make sure you get them right when you build them. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I'm so proud to see that these intersections are finally going to be done. They're in badly need of upgrading, and I'm not sure if people know that Thurles Road intersection is where the cemetery is, where the Pakenham Cemetery is, and that is a very busy intersection. Continually going up there to visit my mum's grave, it's hectic to try and get across there, because when you're there at that intersection, you can't see the cars coming on your left-hand side on the freeway, on the highway, to get across. So it's a bit of a hit and miss sometimes to get across there, and especially when there's funerals on. You know, people on the highway are not stopping or slowing down, and you know, out of respect, when you see cars that have a coffin and also their lights on, it's all about respect and respecting, you know, that service that's going on. So for the gentlemen and ladies at the funeral directors, it's difficult for them to try and control that traffic to get across with the people going across there for the service. So I'm really so pleased that this one in particular has really stood out, and it's finally going to get done, because I think it's going to make a huge difference, and it will slow down the traffic, because people on that road drive 100 and 110 down that road, and there's no speed sign there. So automatically people think it's 100, which is pretty, again, it's a hit and miss and dodging cars. So I'm so pleased with, and all the other intersections that badly needed doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillors, are there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Owen to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, all councillors who spoke. I just wanted to mention, Councillor Ryan, you talked about the cemetery, and I totally agree with your comments there. As a young teenager, I was mowing the lawns at the Pakenham Cemetery, even back then, when my parents were dropping me off at the cemetery to mow the lawns. The intersection was very bad back in those days as well. So it has some great benefits. Obviously, Tivendale Road with the Officer Primary School, there's pressure points there. Bayview Road, with the school community up Bayview Road, anyone who goes there at 8:30 in the morning and 3:15, you know that intersection is dangerous. And unfortunately, people are using the back roads of Officer that are unsealed at the moment to get around that intersection. So by delivering that intersection, we'll have greater community benefits. So I fully support that and look forward to the designs being completed and we move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I will now put this to a vote, councillors. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving along to item 10, notice of motion 1052, withdrawn by Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following: that council officers prepare a report for the April 2020 General Council meeting on whether the current Cardinia Shire Council's meeting procedures and local law allow for a councillor to partake and vote on an item at a council meeting if they are not able to be physically in the council chambers during the meeting. Is it possible to change the Cardinia Shire Council's meeting procedures to allow for a councillor to partake and vote at a council meeting if a councillor could not be physically present but could use technology to take part in a meeting? If so, what changes would be required to be made? What technology could be used to allow a councillor to partake in such a meeting? What would the costs to council be to implement such changes? And are there any risks associated with such a proposed change? So I move that motion, please.
Councillors, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Schilling. Councillor Owen to talk to the item.
Thank you, Mayor. And I drafted this motion, I think, Wednesday, and it's sort of interesting tonight with obviously what's happening in our state and country at the moment. But it's basically some questions. And, councillors, if they can't be part of a meeting, and I'm asking if it could possibly be looked at for briefings, if possible. Not in all circumstances, but I'm talking about the extraordinary circumstances, or if a councillor, was passionate about an issue, particularly a budget, adopting a budget, and if they happen to be incapacitated or other arrangements couldn't, allow them to be there, this will provide an opportunity. So I'm just asking, councillors for their support. It's amazing, tonight in the climate, that may be something that, businesses and council might have to do in the future. But it may not be possible with the local law, Local Government Act that we got before us, the current one and the draft one. But let's ask the questions and see if that's possible. And if it could be extended to briefings, I'd appreciate that. That might be a little bit easier for briefings. But I don't think it would cost a large amount of money. I think we've got that technology already that's available to the public. I'll just ask for a report to come back, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll go to Councillor Schilling, the seconder, to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will support Councillor Owen tonight in getting this report. It's something that I feel, particularly with the events of the world at the moment, it's good to seek some clarity around what we can be doing as an organisation to be able to adapt to technology and just get some of those answers. When the report comes back, would I support this in terms of general council meetings? Potentially not. I think that once a month councillors should come to a council meeting and be present, but I would like to see some of the wording of the draft Local Government Act clarified. It's a little bit ambiguous, particularly when it says a councillor must be present, and what does that mean? So I'm very interested to see where we do stand, as a local council, and just to seek some of that clarification in the I guess the current Local Government Act and the new upcoming Local Government Act, which we have no doubt we'll get through. So I'll support this report, and I'll be interested to see what that means for the future of how we do things, I guess, as a council, as councillors, given that we do have a rapidly changing world that we do live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm in support of the report. I think, it's always good to have reports and follow through with that and get all the information and clarification, as Councillor Schilling said, because there's just so many different interpretations that we can all have. What we perceive is our interpretation, but might not necessarily be the right interpretation of what the government is implementing. I suppose, but from there, I'm not really sure. It'll depend on what the outcome is. But, to me, if you can't, we're only asked one day a week to attend physically. The rest of the time, we utilise our work however it fits in with our lifestyles and our other jobs. And I think that, this is only my personal thought, that if we can't make it due to, rather than illness, due to those facts, there's a different thing, or a family affair that something's happened, or emergencies in some sort of capacity. To me, my interpretation is that, we're only being asked one day a week to be physically in attendance. And I also concerned about the privacy, that if it did happen, if it was accepted, and if someone's sitting at an airport and they tune into their computer system and there's other people around and it's a confidential matter, that concerns me, because who else is listening? It's the same with our family or friends being around us. That can happen. And we can't say it can't, because you just can't predict those things. So that's one of my concerns, is the privacy and how do we get around that if we're not physically here? And that's in general. And I think, once a week for me personally, meeting up with other councillors and the team is something that I value quite consistently, because it helps me have a better understanding of council and how everyone perceives things, and we have the open discussions, which I think is a really good thing. But we also share lots of other events that we attend to, and other things that we're quite happy to share. So I think, for me personally, that's one side of it that I would be looking at. But I value the report coming in, and I'll make my decision based on that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this was pointed out by one of our councillors that this anomaly or grey area could be here, I was absolutely astounded. I always was under the belief that the only way you could be part of a quorum on council or vote on an issue on council was actually if you attend council and you sit in council. But if this comes back, that you can actually not even be here, you could potentially have the mayor sitting up the front and no one else attending at all, and you could actually just go wherever you are in the world and just live stream in and put your votes in and never have to attend. I don't know how that works with the quorum, but I just found it amazing, and it'll be very interesting, because as it was pointed out, there is it says you need to be present. I always thought being present was physically present, but people tell me that could mean other things. So anyway, I look forward to this coming back. I realise technology's changed over a period of time when the original intent back in the old Act was written, but I've never ever heard before that people could vote outside of the council and do it electronically without actually attending. And if we actually get a ruling on this, that you actually don't need to attend, I think that'll just that the sector will be absolutely astonished. I mean, there could be people potentially over in Egypt who could be voting as we speak, saying that I don't need to come back because I can actually vote. I'm actually present even though I'm not here. So anyway, I think that probably raises some eyebrows, but it's true. If you don't need to be here and present and you can vote on things anyway, well, why attend? Anyway, I look forward to the report coming back. I'll be astonished if you don't need to be here, though.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Jody Owen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll make it very quick because it's getting to be a very late night. When I first read Councillor Owen's motion, I sort of was a bit lukewarm, but however I will, as many hopefully would know, tomorrow the Community Cabinet, which the Prime Minister is holding due to the current situation we all find ourselves in at the moment, all premiers, staff and government ministers will be phoning in. That is obviously to stop people meeting en masse in a group situation. Like I said, when I first read this motion, I sort of went, where's this going? But I can sort of see in the times we are now, maybe Councillor Owen's got a bit of ESP, I don't know, but we could be potentially in for some crazy times ahead. And although I would frown upon anyone just phoning in and making a laugh of the situation, because we should be taking all business in this chamber very seriously, because we are dealing with residents' money and planning for our communities, I think that if for whatever reason, due to people who are high risk, or if people do contract this disease that's currently going around, there may very well be a need for us to have something in the pipeline that we can activate if required to keep the Shire functioning. So I really look forward to reading the report and seeing what the officers have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. When I looked at this report, I thought, Councillor Owen, I'm surprised because you're such an honest attender and you attend most meetings, and I can't understand why you'd want to bring up this motion when you're a great attender as you are. So I'm actually looking forward to the report coming back. Yeah, that's fine. I wouldn't like to see a lot of officer time spent on this because I think the merit is that in us being here in attendance and actually face to face, facing the cameras, facing our community as we were voted in for to do. And I think, as Councillor Ryan pointed out, and I thank Councillor Ryan for pointing this out, the security that would be at risk in doing this online. We know what online can be these days. It can be fiddled with, it can be messed with. And I know that when we're in the chamber, we vote on things, we're up for the merit, and I think that's what we should be, my own opinion. So, but I'm looking forward to the. It's okay to have an idea of Councillor Brett Owen. I think it's great to keep our minds thinking and ticking over. Maybe in the future, it'll be probably something in the future like I can see committee meetings. Our Section 86 meetings will be done on Skype. I think we'll find that our general meetings that we're used to will be done from home, and we'll be having that in the new age. But that'll be somewhere down the track, I believe. So, other than that, I'll vote for this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to support this notice of motion simply because before any report was written, I think there needs to be some legal advice sought as to whether or not it is even remotely possible. According to the draft Local Government Act that's currently in State Parliament and about to be approved and become a law, a council meeting is a meeting of the council at which A, all the councillors are subject to this act, entitled to attend and vote, and B, no other person is entitled to vote, and C, a decision to do an act, matter or thing is made by a resolution of the council. So my interpretation of that is you have to be at the meeting. You must be present at the meeting. So if that's the case, and this report's prepared, it's a waste of a report. It's a waste of council officers' time. I've asked the question today of how much time would it take to do this sort of report, and it's around about 40 hours. So that's a whole week of somebody's work that doesn't get done because they're making this report. If they're getting paid $20 to $25 an hour, that's around about $1,000 that we don't need to spend because we don't know what the legal situation is. So if it was dot point 1 was that legal opinion is sought, if it is possible, then a report is made, I would be supportive. But I don't think we should be going ahead with this until we have that legal opinion and we know whether or not this report is even something that's viable. My opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. I'll now go back to Councillor Brett Owen to summarise.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you all councillors, and I appreciate your concern. It's no way my intention whatsoever to make this an option for all councillors. It is, as I sort of led when I talked to this, exceptional circumstances, extraordinary, and I think we are facing exceptional, once in a lifetime, once in a generation type situation before us. And I don't want it to take too much time of officers' time. Whether they can do a slight investigation, I don't know. A report 40 hours seems long to me, but I think it's probably appropriate in this time. It's uncharted waters. Briefings. We could have a situation where we're adopting a budget and we've got 4 councillors. Obviously, next budget could be adopted next time or whatever, but you can imagine. But it's just exceptional circumstances, and I know they're looking at Parliament, this, and I value a councillor being in attendance. That is a must, and that should always be a priority. But it's those exceptional circumstances, and so I really can I seek that clarification to our CEO? Would such a report take 40 hours, and the cost of that be obviously equated to that hours, or can an opinion be sought? Or because I understand council is currently looking at how we staff meet in this problem that's before us. So we're sort of already considering this with staff. What about councillors?
Yes, I'm going to ask the CEO to respond to that question.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so obtaining legal advice would be the first port of call. However, we are investigating options for officers to meet, and councillors are considered in all of those business continuity plans as well. So I think the combination of the two, seeking advice on formal council meetings and also some alternative meeting formats for councillors, will be looked at. The 40 hours is a really quick estimate, includes governance considerations and technology considerations, and so in providing a report to council, it would take an amount of time to provide a well-considered report, but we will include legal advice as part of that for the council.
Thank you to the CEO. I think it's needed in these times. I think we're already doing a version of it with our staff and how we're operating during this current sort of climate. So I think it's timely to look at this and see if there's an option in the future. But yeah, I think it's timely and it'd be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. That concludes discussion of the items withdrawn. Can I please have a motion to adopt the recommendations for the balance of the items listed? Moved by Councillor Jodie Owen and seconded by Councillor Graham Moore. Councillors, all those in favour? I declare that carried. Reports or minutes of committees. I note that reports from various committees have been tabled in addition to the minutes of recent council briefing sessions, and these are available if any councillors wish to view them. Councillor reports. Do councillors have any matters they wish to report on? Any councillors? All right. You got in last second. Councillor Ryan, you can jump in and have a report.
I won't keep it long. Mainly a report on, I want to keep the public up to date with the mental health, and I've been doing a lot of conferences around Melbourne and out of Melbourne, and we're going very, very well. We've been working alongside with Martin Foley, our MP for mental health. And unfortunately, because of the virus, there was a huge conference that I was supposed to be at tonight. It was a 3-day conference, has been rescheduled for later in the year. So it will work alongside the Royal Commission. So we've still got time to get all of the information into the Royal Commission. This will put Council on the map. It's the first in Council to get mental health to this stage of getting services within our community. And working with the team, and the team's been so fantastic within Council. I commend them for all the hard work they've been doing alongside. And we continually have meetings on an ongoing basis to keep up to date of what everyone's doing. So it's a really important thing, but I just wanted to mention that that it has been rescheduled, unfortunately, because of the virus. And so again, the virus is affecting, because we were having people from overseas, and there was over probably 4,000 people that were going to be there, and I'm lucky enough to be one of the presenters alongside Sophie Scott from the ABC. She's the mental health reporter. So to be asked to do that, it's a real challenge, but also it just says that we've achieved where we need to be now within Council, and putting us on the map as to how important mental health is and what we're doing within our community for mental health. So I'll keep everyone in the loop of when the next forum will be on.
Thank you, Councillor Rome. Councillors, any other reports? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just reporting on some exciting information around the waste space. The circular economy policy came out. There is a whole lot of meat to come onto the bones of this, but in brief, an outline of it is waste is becoming and is now an essential service. There will be some amazing reforms in this space. We will finish up with 4 bins in the end. There will be another glass bin, which will be attached to the other bins that we have. The container deposit scheme will come in the next few years, and there will be an export waste ban. So therefore, certain waste that we send overseas will come to an end, and we won't be able to send it overseas. We will have to treat it ourselves here. The curbside reforms with the glass service will be something that the sector will need to find an end product for, and we'll need to learn to separate our waste greater. Also too, people will have seen that the landfill levy will increase. One of the problems we have at the moment is Victoria is the dumping ground of waste from New South Wales and from South Australia, because our landfill levy was so much lower than the other states. It was cheaper to send their waste to Victoria and dump it here than actually process it themselves in their own state. So the landfill levy has been increased to an amount which is under what their landfill levy cost is, but it will no longer make it profitable to dump all their waste here. It's like SKM. Part of SKM, when it burned, it had South Australia's waste in it. That's why it was being stockpiled in there, because they couldn't take it in their area and it was cheaper to bring it over here. So these are some of the problems that we've inherited over time. I must say the recycling space, the organic space, the procurement space will be an amazing space too, that we can look into the future, that we can use our waste to go into road base and things like that. And councils will have to use so much local material rather than getting virgin material out of the ground to use it, when we've actually got a whole lot of resources there. And I think waste should actually be renamed resources, because as long as we think of it as waste, we think it's worthless, it's worth nothing, and it's only good for nothing. Whereas if you see it as a resource, you see it as a valuable material that we will use into things. Look, this will come back to council. I believe the FOGO has got up to 7 years to come in. The glass has got about 4 years to come in, but you're going to see some councils put it in straight away. I know Hobson's Bay have moved into this area straight away. They've got a 4th bin, and they're trialling that and seeing how that goes. They tell me it isn't a trial, they're doing it for good. So we will wait and watch this space. This will be a generational changing space. We in Victoria had the luxury of selling our recycled waste to overseas. People would actually come to our house and pick it up and pay you to take it away. And we were the only state in Australia that had the luxury of that. Some councils are getting millions of dollars a year in the black for selling their recycled waste, and China was buying it and taking it over. They're not processing their own, taking ours, which was 80% clean. But nevertheless, that no longer is happening. They always warned that they'd process their own one day, and they're not going to take anyone else's waste. So we have to deal with our own now. It's about time that we did that, and we utilised our own resource here and build an industry that can cope with that for our future generations. Anyway, I'll bring you more information on this. As someone said, this night's gone quite a long time, and I could continue talking about waste for a long time. I'm a bit of a waste tragic. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other councillors have reports? Yep, Councillor Pradhan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to report on behalf of the Casey Cardinia Foundation. Very sad. A few weeks ago, we lost our executive officer, Carlos Santon. He was with the foundation for almost 2 years, and he died too early, 41 years of age. He did a really great job at the foundation. He really got the numbers of sponsors, particularly at the dinner right up, and those sponsors have a long-term sort of commitments to the foundation. He was really good, a well-loved community member, particularly around the Hampton Park area, and he did so many good things for our foundation. Increased obviously revenue, increased at the dinner and other sponsors. So I just want to acknowledge Carlos, and it's very sad, and I know that the CEO is also a director, so we farewell him and thank him. The foundation has 3 vacancies. The Casey Council will nominate a new nominee, but I want to thank the outgoing directors. There's 3 that are leaving, so I want to thank them, and I just want to promote that we're currently going out to some expressions of interest to the community of Casey and Cardinia in relation to any interested persons to fill those vacancies. So we're just going out. So if anyone's interested, and also we're obviously advertising for an executive officer. But the foundation will continue to grow, and we'd just like to thank those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other councillors? They're being done. We'll move along to our councillor presentation of petitions. Councillors, do you have any petitions you would like to present? Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to present a petition. Yourself and I met with 2 Emerald locals 2 weeks ago, Bob Phelps and Marsha Emmerman, and they presented us a petition from ICAN, which is the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, and the petition reads that we request Council endorse the ICAN Cities Appeal urging the Australian Government to sign and ratify the treaty. We further request that Council communicate its endorsement to the Prime Minister, Foreign and Defence Ministers and Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Foreign Defence Ministers and all of the political parties represented in the Australian Parliament. And finally, we suggest that Council take steps to ensure that Council funds are not invested in companies that produce nuclear weapons. So Bob and Marsha have gone out in the local community and have secured approximately 110 to 120 signatures. So I'd just like to table that tonight to get a report back at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I'll now move on to community question time. We've received one question from Miss Gloria O'Connor, and I note that Gloria is not in the gallery tonight. So we will reply to you via email and send your response there, Gloria, if you're listening. We have also received 2 questions from Miss Rosa Santo. and I also see that Rosa is not in the gallery tonight. So I will refer your 2 questions will be responded to via email, and you'll receive that also. Councillor question time. We have received a question from Councillor Brett Owen. Would you like to raise your question, please?
Thank you, Mayor. It's a very important question, and the question is to the relevant General Manager, please. The group of shops located at 4 Old Princess Highway, Beaconsfield, was impacted by a substantial building fire in July 2019. The fire has been devastating for affected local small businesses, which has forced them to be closed and unable to operate since. Can officers provide details of the council contact and communications with the owner or owners of the site to ascertain their intentions for the site? What is council doing to ensure the amenity of the fire-affected property does not negatively impact surrounding businesses and the abutting parkland? Thank you. It's a very important issue. It's been talked about, around Beaconsfield for many months, and just an update would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll refer your question to Peter Benedict.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Owen. From a building regulatory perspective, the discussions with the investigations have not focused on the future intentions of the site. Rather, they've been focused on public safety and continuing to monitor public safety. But I do understand from an economic development that council officers have initiated contact with the owners, but I believe that has not been reciprocated at this point in time. We'll continue, obviously, from an amenity perspective and public safety, we'll continue to monitor the site.
All right, thank you, Mr. Benedict, and thank you, Councillor Owen. All right, councillors, that concludes tonight's proceedings. Thank you all for your attendance. I declare this meeting closed.